Erev Tov Rabotai, we are continuing with our Mishna Yomi, Masechet Beitzah. We are up to Perek Bet Mishnah Yud. Today's Mishnah Yud should be Leilun Nishmat, Neria ben Svetlana, Ranbayev, and Eliyahu ben Burcha Yisraelov, Menuchatam beGan Eden, Amen, and Avdei ben Chaim L'Chaim, for the Refuah Shenamav Bachabat Esther, and Daniel Shalom ben Rosa, Betoch Shai Cholei Israel. This Mishnah discusses laws of Tumah, Muktzah, and Melacha that apply to a child's toy wagon. The Mishnah begins, Agala shel katan tme'a midras. A child's toy wagon contracts midras tumah, meaning it becomes an ava tumah if a child sits in it when he is a zav, because it is made for a child to sit in. Now the laws of midras literally being stepped on states that when certain tameh people, when certain impure people, including a zav, zava, and nida, put their weight on an object, it becomes impure with the same level of impurity as the person himself, namely Avatuma. This is spoken about in the Torah, Sefer Vayikra, chapter 15, Psukim 4-6, and Mishnot Kelim, chapter 1, Mishnah 3. Usually, when one transmits impurity to another, the impurity of the second item is weaker than the impurity of the first. In the case of Midras being stepped on, however, the object that receives the impurity becomes impure to the same degree as the source of the impurity. This law applies only to an object that is intended to be used to support the weight of a person, meaning a chair or bed. A child's wagon is therefore included in this law, since it is meant to support the weight of the child who sits in it. Therefore, if he is a zav, his wagon becomes an avatuma like him. V'nitelet b'Shabbat, and it may be moved on Shabbat because it is not muktzeh. V'nah nigreret el al gabei chelim, but it may not be dragged on Shabbat except over utensils, meaning clothes that cover the ground, because otherwise it will make a groove in the earth, which is prohibited under the melacha of plowing. Now the next Tana disagrees with the last ruling. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Rabbi Yehuda says, Kol hakelim en nigrarin, all heavy utensils such as chairs or tables may not be dragged directly over the ground without clothes beneath them, because they make grooves in the earth. Chutz min ha'agala mipnei she choveshet, except for a wagon which may be pulled directly along the ground without clothes beneath it, because it has wheels which do not make grooves in the earth but merely roll over it and press it down. The Rav explains, although the surface of the ground is lowered by the wheels pressing down on it, this is not considered plowing, since no earth is loosened thereby. And the Rav does tell us, Ukvar afsika hilchata, the halacha was already decided, Rabbi Shimon, following the opinion of Rabbi Shimon, the Amar who said, Gorer adam mita kiseh v'safsal, a person may drag a bed, a chair, and a bench, provided that he does not intend to make a ditch. And that is then of Mishnah Yud. We continue now with Perek Gimel Mishnah Aleph. The following chapter deals with the activities needed to provide meat for Yom Tov. Although the Torah allows us to perform Melacha Yom Tov in order to prepare food for that day, not all melachot are permitted for this purpose. The Torah permitted only those melachot normally done close to the time of eating, in small quantities to prepare for a meal, such as kneading, baking, cooking, and slaughtering. Now, in the absence of refrigeration, meat was generally eaten shortly after the animal was slaughtered. Those melachot done well in advance in large quantities, such as harvesting, threshing, and sifting, are not permitted. Our Mishnah will discuss the status of the melacha of trapping animals, birds, and fish on Yom Tov. The Mishnah begins, En sadin dagim mina bivarin biyom tov. We may not trap fish from a pond on Yom Tov, since trapping is a forbidden melacha on Yom Tov. Even for the sake of preparing food, trapping is similar to harvesting, and that it is usually done substantially before the food is eaten. It is therefore forbidden on Yom Tov. Then notnin lifnei mizanot, nor may we put food in the pond for the fish, since they can find what to eat on their own in the pond. Feeding them is therefore an unnecessary exertion, the Rav says. Aval tzadin hayav va'of mina bivarin, but we may trap wild animals such as deer and birds from small enclosures in which they have been placed before Yom Tov. The commentators explain the Mishnah uses a generic term, bivarin, enclosures. This has different meanings in different contexts. In the case of fish, it refers to a small pond. In the case of wild animals, it means a corral. In the case of birds, it refers to a small roof structure like a chicken coop. In all cases, it refers to a small enclosure that confines the type of creature being discussed. Now, these animals are considered fully trapped in these enclosures, so that taking them from there is not a melacha. Now, the melacha of trapping is defined as catching a free animal, meaning one that is not already trapped. It therefore does not apply to animals or birds that are already trapped in an enclosure. However, fish in a pond are not considered trapped because they can hide in the cracks and crevices of the pond. Now, to be permitted for slaughter in Yom Tov, these animals must also be designated before Yom Tov for slaughter. Otherwise, they would be considered muktzah and forbidden for use, as the Mishnah Berurah writes in Orach Chaim, chapter 497, Sivkat and 20. The Mishnah continues, "V'notnin lifnei mezonot," and we may put food in the enclosure for them on Yom Tov, because these enclosures do not contain sufficient food for them. Now, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel clarifies the previous ruling. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel says, "L'chol bivarin shavin." Not all enclosures are the same. The previous Tana did not intend to permit taking animals from all such enclosures. Zeh klal, rather this is the rule. Kol mechusar tzida asu. Any animal that still lacks trapping because the enclosure it is held is so large that one must still chase the animal to catch it, meaning one cannot simply reach out and grab it in a single lunge. It is forbidden to be taken on Yom Tov. V'sheno mechusar tzida mutar. And any animal that does not lack trapping because the enclosure it is in is small enough that one may just reach out and grab it, is permitted to be taken on Yom Tov. And that is on the Botayv today's Mishna Yomi. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen v'amen.